In this video I will give a synopsis of each episode and then I will review the series. The episode starts with Andor walking down the street on Moriana 1 in 5BBY. He goes into a club and meets someone there. There are two security guards in the club and they object Andor being served before them, and they don't like him. Andor asks about someone who left several months ago, his sister, and mentions the planet Canary. Andor leaves and the guards follow him and pull him over wanting his ID, and the Gobby one pulls out a weapon and he tries to take Andor's money. Andor fights back. One of the guards perish and the Gobby one pleads for his life, but Andor dispatches him. Andor runs back to his ship and flies away. On Ferrix, a droid goes down the street and some dog-like creatures go by and one relieves himself on the droid. The droid goes to meet Andor, who is dreaming about when he was young on a settlement on Casa and he observed a ship crashing. Andor wakes up and talks to the droid. Someone is after him and he asks the droid to cover for him. On Moriana 1, at the security officer Cyril Khan tells the chief about the two security officers perishing. The chief doesn't want the case to move forward and tells Khan to drop it, and he is told to make up a story which Khan doesn't like. The chief is on his way to give a report to the Empire about crime on the planet and doesn't want to rock the boat. Andor talks to his friend Brasso to get himself an alibi. Andor meets his friend Bix to get her to contact her rebel contact because Andor has an Imperial navigation box to trade and he wants off the planet quickly. In a flashback, the young Andor and the others are loading things up and getting ready to leave their camp. Back at the security office, Khan continues in his investigation despite his orders and finds an unknown ship. Someone stops Andor and he wants his deposit back, but he doesn't get it, and Andor rebuffs him and his mate that he brought along with him. Bix leaves the shop to prepare to contact her rebel contact, and she is followed by her boyfriend. Bix goes into a shop to ask for a piece of equipment. It is to communicate with her contact, which she then goes to do. Khan is continuing his investigation and is frustrated by the uncooperativeness of the staff. Ultimately, there isn't much information about Canary, and the census goes back 6 years. Khan issues a bulletin about a Canary human male on Ferrix. Andor is repairing his ship and someone at the shipyard covers for him, but he doesn't want Andor back there again. And there's another flashback and young Andor and the others leave their camp to investigate the crash site. Following young Andor and the others walking to the crash site, and back to the present, someone bangs a large stone drum signifying the end of the working day. Andor walks through the streets. Back to Bix's boyfriend, who reads an Imperial bulletin describing Andor and is concerned. He does ask Bix out for dinner. Andor meets Marva, his adoptive mum, and the droid from the first episode reads a bulletin of Andor to him, and Marva is concerned and confronts Andor over it. Andor tells her what happened. Bix's contact Luthen is coming. Bix wants to meet Andor, which they do, but they are followed by her boyfriend, who is drunk, and he goes to a payphone and phones security to dob him in. Later, Bix goes to her boyfriend's place and they spend the night together. Khan gets another security officer and 12 men so they can go and get Andor. Andor is back at the shop and gets the hardware he needs. There is another flashback and the group arrive at the crash site. It is a downed Republic ship. The leader goes to investigate and the others follow. Back to the present, Luthen arrives and he basically assesses the layout of the town. The man bangs the stone to signal the start of the working day. There is a scene with Bix and her boyfriend and she has errands to run. Andor gathers his things to leave. There is another flashback and they are investigating the crash site, a crashed Republic vessel. There is a survivor who starts shooting and the leader perishes, but the Republic officer perishes in turn. Back into the present, Andor meets Zanwan, who owns a transport business, and he is arguing with someone over the planet of Canary, and is looking it up. It was a mining accident that happened years before. Andor negotiates passage out. There is a briefing for the security team to apprehend Andor. Khan gives an uninspiring speech. On the bus-like transport, Luthen has small talk with another passenger. The episode then ends. This episode starts with a flashback. Young Andor goes back to the crash ship to investigate it. Then back to the present. Andor walks through a shipyard or salvage type place to meet Brasso, telling him he is leaving and to care for Marva, and that he will pay back the credits he owes. Luthen's bus lands and he goes to meet Bix, who tells him about the bulletin, a complication, and she takes him to meet Andor. The security start landing there. There's a flashback to Marva and her husband, Clem, and a little droid enter the crashed ship for salvage, and there is someone else there. It's Andor, who starts smashing up the panels when Marva and co enter, when this is happening. The security are still on a landing trajectory, then they land and search for Andor. Luthen goes to meet with Andor. In a flashback, Marva subdues Andor and takes him with her as a Republic frigate is on its way, which puts Andor in danger. The security goes to Marva's house with a warrant for Andor and search the house. During the search, Andor calls the droid and they are able to track the signal. Luthen meets Andor to negotiate for the box. The security leave the house, and on their way to where Andor is, they are seen. Someone goes to warn Bix, who realizes her boyfriend has dobbed him in. Luthen tries to recruit Andor and mentions his father, and he asks Andor how he got the Imperial box, which Andor explains is that he just walked in to the base as if he belonged and he took it. Security then close in and people start banging objects to warn of the danger. The security close in and Bix is arrested. Some security arrive at the warehouse. Luthen sets off an explosion. There is a firefight, Andor is wounded and they escape but without the box. Bix's boyfriend tries to help Bix, but he is dispatched. The remaining security set up an ambush and are ambushed in turn when a rigged vehicle draws the security away and blows up, and some of the security perish while Andor and Luthen escape. There is a flashback to Marva and co escaping the planet on her ship after rescuing Andor. Back to the present, Bix goes into hiding, Marva is upset and the remaining security are in shell shock, and the episode ends. On the ship, Luthen and Andor escape, and Luthen continues to try and recruit Andor. It is revealed that Andor was on campaign on Mimbar for 6 months, as a cook before deserting. Luthen wants Andor to help out in a heist of the Empire's payroll. The ISB, the Imperial Intelligence, has a meeting regarding allocation of resources, and questions over Ferrex come up. Scarif is also brought up in this meeting. Andor prepares to meet the team, reference the heist. Luthen gives Andor a down payment of a crystal from the time of the Ratakan uprising. Luthen goes to meet the leader of the group, Vex, to tell her to take Andor and that he is expendable. Vex reluctantly agrees. The ISB in the Morana 1 security office take over the investigation. They reprimand the corporate security and disbands them and takes over in the running of things. The heist is revealed to actually be on an Imperial armory, and Andor was told it was an Imperial payroll. He is not happy about this. Andor and Vex have to hide from a TIE fighter patrol. Luthen arrives on Coruscant and puts on a disguise. Dedra is investigating Ferrex and the Imperial box that was recovered. Rivalry at the ISB is evident when, later in the episode, she tries to get the investigation on Ferrex under her control, because the stolen box falls under her jurisdiction, and she wants to get the data, but was refused by the agent in charge on the planet, and the boss, Major Partagaz, doesn't support her. The rebel team are not happy at Andor's addition just before the operation. Vex introduces Andor as Clem, and it was her idea to bring him. The team are not to know of Luthen. On Coruscant, Khan arrives and goes to his mother's apartment. Mon Mothma goes to meet Luthen under the guise of buying a present for her husband. In reality, it is to discuss getting funding for the rebellion, and to bring more people into the circle. Mon Mothma goes home and is shown to be in a loveless marriage, arranged when both her and her husband were young. Her husband has sprung a party on her, which she had forgotten about, with guests who are her political opponents. Back with the rebels, the plan for the heist is revealed to Andor, and he is given material to learn that night. Khan is at his mum's apartment, and is in a thoughtful state of mind. He doesn't know what to do, and he talks it over with his mum, who thinks that he has no prospects, and she calls Uncle Harlow for a favour. Andor is sleeping at the camp and he wakes up. He notices Arvel bathing and that he has taken Andor's stuff while Andor was sleeping. Andor wants his stuff back. The equipment is all there. Arvel is a former prisoner of the Empire, and he wants revenge against the Empire. Mon Mothma is at the table in her apartment. Her husband walk in, they call their daughter in. Mon has arranged to take her to school, and her daughter argues with her going to school. There are no classes, and her father said that he would take her, despite Mon scheduling to take her, and this would ruin Mon's schedule, and her husband doesn't support her. Karis, who is one of the rebels and is very idealistic, gives Andor an old scanner. He is writing a manifesto. Vel tells Andor about measuring and calculating the weight of the cargo and getting it off the ramp onto the shuttle and away. Andor realizes they don't know how to measure the weight and get away, and is completely shocked by this. He tells her how to measure the weight through a gauge in the cockpit and insists he will pilot the ship away. Back on Ferrix, the ISB agent overseeing the repairs to the town appoints a captain at a hotel as his headquarters. Andor is trained to march as a soldier to infiltrate the base. Andor makes a suggestion about the order in which they march, which is accepted. A TIE fighter flies overhead on patrol and comes back right overhead, and it returns to base, and it doesn't detect the rebels. Andor is upset when Arvel moves his stuff again, and after a brief argument he gets his stuff back. Andor tries on his Imperial uniform. At the ISB headquarters, Dedra is still conducting her investigation about the pattern of taking of the sensitive Imperial hardware. Back at the rebel base that night, they burn the model of the base and they prepare to leave the next morning, which they then do. Khan's mum has talked to Uncle Harlow and relates this to Khan. Uncle Harlow is thinking about what Khan can do. It's a long walk for the rebels to the base. Arvel takes Andor by surprise with a weapon and finds the Kyber crystal that was given to Andor by Luthen, and he is upset by this. An Imperial fighter comes nearby. Andor explains that he was hired and is being paid, and Vel explains further that he was either take him or call the operation off. Andor tells them that everyone is nervous but not to allow it to control them and have the fear get in the way. No one is happy. Mon and her husband are in their car and she didn't tell him about the charity foundation, and someone else knows more about her activity than he does. The rebels arrive at the base, and back to Khan, he can't get over his failure to capture Andor in a previous episode. The rebels send a signal to their man on the inside. Arvel tells Andor about the Empire and his brother perishing at the farm. It is his way of apologising, and basically that's all Andor will get. Vel and Sintra are not going with them and they leave. Luthen is hoping for some communication from the rebels about the heist, and his secretary is worried about him and the raid and Andor, and the episode ends. The episode starts with the rebels at camp on a misty morning and nervous before the mission. The Imperials prepare for the arrival of the natives for a ceremony for the Eye. 30 more sentries are brought in for the event. The rebels try and call Vel to get the right radio frequency and are ready to begin the raid. Andor and the others are all dressed up. A patrol is near where Vel is, but they move on. Andor and the others march off in uniform and get to the checkpoint where their contact is, as well as another patrol, and they move towards the base. Vel and Sintra then go into the water. The Imperial contact wants Squad 3, Andor's group, to escort the Commandant back to base. Vel and Sintra reach and infiltrate the base and plant a communication jammer on the communications tower. Vel stalls the beginning of the mission, but then gives a go, and she and Sintra use the rope to descend from the base to the ground. Squad 3 then escorts the Commandant back to base. They then go into action and take the Commandant, his family, and an Imperial colonel who is building an airstrip prisoner, and they enter the base. Vel and Sintra join them, and Sintra dispatches the colonel and restrains the Commandant's family and the guards before entering the base, with the Commandant to get the payroll in the vault. Sintra stays to guard the prisoners. The rest go to the vault, capture the other guards, and the rebels force the Commandant and the guards to help move the credits. However, part of the rebels' communications is overheard, and the communications officer tries to get help, but the Imperial contact, Lieutenant Gorn, tries to fog them off, and he goes to join the rebels. The comms officer goes to get other troops anyway. The Imperials try to contact the base, but Sintra turns off the power. Some Imperial guards head to the vault, and TIE fighters prepare to take off. Once the Imperials arrive at the vault, the Commandant perishes of a heart attack, and there is a firefight. The Telangorn and Tamarin perish, as do some Imperials. Andor gets into a fistfight with an Imperial, and he starts to lose, and Karis saves him by dispatching the Imperial. The rebels take off with a large portion that is, of the payroll, in the vault, but Karis is crushed by the credit boxes and is mortally wounded. The TIE fighters pursue. Karis tells Andor to climb through the eye, and the fighters are destroyed. Arvel urges Andor to get Karis to a doctor to try and save him, and Andor agrees. Vel is reluctant and wants to safeguard the hall. They manage to get to a doctor. Arvel states they have got 80 million credits, and wants to split it with Andor and leave. Andor then dispatches him. Andor tells Vel about this, and she doesn't believe him. Karis has perished due to his wounds. Andor gives Vel the crystal and wants to take his cut. She gives him Karis' manifesto to read. There is a briefing at the ISB headquarters on the heist. In the Senate, Mon Mothma is giving a speech, but is then interrupted and given a note about the heist. It also hits the Imperial news, and Luthen is very happy. Khan is contemplating things, and his mother calls him in to say he has a job interview. They hear the news about the heist, and he realises who is involved. At the ISB briefing on how to react and preparation for future actions, a new tribute tax on those who are harbouring rebels, a crackdown on festivals that may be used to cover for the rebels, and then removing toleration for those same festivals that would be used by the rebels. There are new proposals to enhance ISB powers. Dedra thinks the measures are a mistake and will help the rebels. Luthen listens to the news report. Mon then turns up to meet with him under the guise of returning the stone, but it is to discuss the heist, and she doesn't approve. Luthen pushes back. The rebellion needs money, and reprimands Mon about she knows where this was leading, and also that a network was established and he wants action. Mon, who is a pacifist, and is concerned about the suffering it will cause, which Luthen is counting on. Khan's interview at the Bureau of Standards, and his record on Morlana 1 comes up. Khan wants to clear his name and have Morlana expunged from his record. Vel goes to Coruscant. Luthen's secretary is on her way to meet her, a long way round through an apartment block. Dedra wants further data on missing Imperial hardware for all bases in all systems over the past few years. Back at the base, Sintra gets a bike and she sees a Star Destroyer overhead. Luthen's secretary meets Vel about the money from the heist and the operation. The money is safe, Andor is a loose end, and the secretary wants him gone. Sintra then bikes off after the Imperial Star Destroyer has passed overhead. Andor goes to Ferrex to see Morva, and finds out that Ferrex has an Imperial garrison. Bix's boyfriend has perished, and that he was the one who dobbed him in. The Empire is there to stay, and Andor wants to leave and take Marva with him. She is reluctant. Back on Coruscant at a party, Mon does small talk with an old family friend, Tay. Her daughter is introduced, but then is excused. He is anti-Empire, and he doesn't realise that she is also. She tells him that spies are at the party, and that also her driver is a plant. Her husband is watching. She subtly tells him her plans. She wants his help as an old friend to help get funds for her and wealth from back home to go to the rebellion via her charity organisations. Her husband comes over and then leaves. Mon tells Tay that he knows nothing and that her husband is not to be trusted. Andor goes to see Bix, and she is not happy to see him. Bix and Andor are former lovers. People blame him for the Imperial presence, those corporate security he dispatched, then the security attempt to get him that went wrong. All this brought the Empire there, and he borrowed, stealed, and then disappeared. So, he is not popular, and he would be turned in. He gives her 12,000 credits to pay off his debts. Over 2 flashbacks, the Empire parade through the town square, and Clem tries to stop Andor getting involved, and then tries to stop other troublemakers, but he fails, and he is arrested, and he is hanged and left on display. Andor then goes and gets the guards who did this. Back at Marva's house the following morning, she is not leaving and wants to start a rebellion on Ferrex. She knows he was involved in the heist. He would be worried about Marva and leaving her. She tells him that she loves him and he loves her too. She tells him to stop searching for his sister because there were no survivors on Canary and to let it all go. At the ISB meeting, they are discussing operations. One of the members wants to discuss Dedra and her investigation of the hardware on Ferrix. The other agent is upset that she used new powers to get the data and she is being proactive and has found data on the other hardware thefts. Dedra used the data to back up her claims about the links between the missing hardware and rebel activity. The agent accuses her of breaking the rules, but she tells him about his concern with self-preservation. Morvana 1 is transferred to Dedra's authority because the other agent has failed. Her superior, Major Partagaz, congratulates Dedra but tells her to watch her back. On Neomas, Andor is in a flat with a woman. He is feigning having a shower and has a fake name. He takes a walk on the beach, looking around a lot, and he observes droids on patrol. A stormtrooper believes Andor is looking around and up to no good. He is sweating because it's hot. Andor insists he's a tourist going to the shops. An Imperial droid restrains Andor and the other prisoners. He is arrested on trumped-up charges and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Khan is at his new job. Dedra can prove the theft of the hardware and link them to the rebel groups. Andor is being taken to prison. Khan is at the Bureau of Standards, and the ISB agents, including Dedra, turn up to question him. Back on the prison transport, they are strapped in and the ship then takes off. Back to Khan, and he has been interviewed by Dedra over Andor. He has been making many requests about Andor, and he is interviewed over the events on Ferrix. Khan tells her Andor is a threat to the Empire and that he is trying to track him. She wants info on his report, which he didn't compose or read, he just signed it, so she arranges for him to get his report and to read it. Norfana 5 is the prison planet that Andor is taken to. Dedra then presents the stolen hardware at an ISB meeting and explains that the guards of the hardware were scared to report it stolen. This is a problem galaxy-wide, and this hardware was taken by Andor, who is also wanted for the 2 corporate security guards in the first episode. Further, Andor was trying to give hardware to someone who the ISB calls Axis, i.e. Luthen, the central figure in the rebel network who is gathering Imperial secrets. Dedra wants to expand surveillance. Colonel Woolif is reluctant to allocate resources and incur extra cost, but Partagaz supports her. Ferrix was Axis's first mistake, and Dedra wants to track him. At the prison planet, the prisoners are offloaded. Norfana 5 is used for Imperial manufacturing. The guards punish prisoners through electric current sent to the floor. There are 3 settings. The guards are using special boots, and that's why they have no weapons, because they don't need them, or they feel they don't need them, and these boots make them immune to the electrical shock along the floor. Khan, who has read his report, and he is not pleased. There is no mention of Andor's helpers. Also, he saw Andor with another older man in a cloak, but he didn't get a good look and can't describe him. Dedra offers Khan that if he steps away from his requests, that she will say he has been of service to the Empire. Khan wants to serve the Empire and tries to get a job. She refuses and warns him that he has become a little obsessed, and that if he persists, she won't protect him anymore. Andor is then been taken to where he has to work, at the prison planet. Kino Loy introduces himself as he is a leader of the group of workers on the day shift. They are building parts for the Death Star, but the prisoners don't know that. He has, that is Kino Loy, has 249 days left on his sentence, and he doesn't want to jeopardize his release. Andor observes how these parts are made, and after being introduced to his work team, he begins. Mon and her husband at a party. She needs votes against the Emperor's new bill. Mon's old friend comes up, and he doesn't like her husband. New Imperial policies are making the transfer of money difficult. After the shift at the prison, the day shift hands over to the night shift. Andor then realizes what a big operation it is, and when he looks out of the window during the changeover of the shifts. Back at Mon's party, and she continues to discuss the new legislation with other guests. Back to the prison planet, the prisoners are taken to their sleeping areas. Andor is slow to get to his sleeping area, and is trying to take things in. Back to the party, small talk. Mon asks if Tay is still here, but he has actually left. Back on the prison planet, fast forwarded 30 shifts. At the prison showers, they get dressed and back to work. Andor is working quickly. Back on Ferrix, Bassa walks down the street. Bix is checking up on Marva, and she is ill. Bassa then enters Marva's house. Marva fell again by the hotel. She was trying to pry open the entrance at the floodgate of the base to see if there was a tunnel under the base so the rebels could get in and out of the base. Bix doesn't know where Andor is. Vel and Sintra are both on Ferrix, spying on Bix and Marva to see if Andor shows up. They are more than just friends, and they acknowledge their love for each other. At Bix's shop, she tells Salmon she needs to contact Luthen to get in touch with Andor about his mum. She tries to contact Luthen, and back at Luthen's shop, his assistant is worried about this leading back to them, and about Andor. Luthen thinks she is guessing. She suggests Luthen is slipping, and not thinking straight. He counters that he is not slipping, and which he knows, but she tells him he needs to wake up, and he agrees with her to shut Ferrix down, and Bix is upset when she gets no response. Vel leaves and Sintra remains and watches Bix. Luthen leaves Coruscant for Segra Milo. At night, one of the prisoners steps onto the electric floor and he perishes. Bix wakes and hears the banging of things outside, and she goes outside and witnesses the searching of Salmon's house. He has been arrested. The Imperials want to arrest Bix, and she runs and tries to escape. At Segra Milo, Luthen meets Saul Gerrera, and they talk about who did the heist, and both deny it. Luthen offers some equipment and wants Saul to meet Anto Krieger, who has been probing the Imperial power station and has an angle for his next move. Saul is reluctant, and Luthen tells him that they need to pull together to defeat the Empire. Saul disagrees, and he brings up Anto Krieger being a former separatist, and he doesn't like the other desperate rebel groups, and insists on working alone, telling Luthen that he must find others to help Anto. He asks what Luthen is, and Luthen responds by saying he is a coward and terrified that the Empire's power will grow to the point where they can't be stopped. Back on Ferrix, Bix is arrested and taken to a hotel for interrogation. Salmon has been tortured. Bix is then brought in and Dedra starts the interrogation. Back on the prison planet, there is another shift. Bix is being interrogated by Dedra, who threatens a new form of torture. Dedra asks about an unknown woman, Luthen's assistant, giving Salmon a radio, and she has only met him once. Bix knows Dedra is ISB, the worst of the worst. Dedra questions are about the missing hardware, and Salmon has revealed that Bix met Luthen 6 times. He is referred to as the buyer. She also asks about Andor and the buyer. Bix resists the intimidation by Dedra, who gives her over to the doctor for torture. At the prison, Andor's group is ahead in the manufacturing race and are on task for winning the day. The old man in the group is near release. Back with Bix, the torture is about to begin. The doctor reveals about a massacre on an alien planet that was broadcast and recorded. 3 comms officers were then found huddling and broken by this, and this is why this is then used as a means of torture for Bix, and generally as well. Andor leaves to take a walk and goes to a panel, and he starts sawing a pipe. Partway through, an alarm goes off. A new man on the block. The elevator is not wired, but the rail is. Andor is plotting with another worker. Back with a traumatized Bix, and she is questioned further. Back at the prison, the old man is forgetful. Andor's group is still ahead. Dedra wants to keep Bix alive, but the other Imperial wants to hang Salmon. In the Senate, Mon opposes the new legislation, giving a speech against it. In the cab, the driver tells Mon that her cousin is at the flat, and her cousin is Vel. In the prison, the changing of the shifts is delayed. Andor is worried. The power is then cut off for a moment. There is something wrong on level 2. Kino is trying to restore order, and the changeover then happens. Mon meets Vel, who has given Mon's daughter a new dress, and they talk about the rebellion. Neither gives too much away, and they don't go into details. Mon asks what Luthen has Vel doing, and Vel states who. Mon is worried that they are in over their heads. Andor asks Kino about escape and the number of guards. Kino has 217 days left and doesn't want to jeopardize that. Andor states who cares what they say because no one is listening. The prisoners are cheaper than droids and easier to replace. At an ISB meeting, the interrogation went well. No leads on Axis. The scope of what he is doing is it is a disciplined operation. No one network or supplier knows about the other. Bix gave Dedra a list of Imperial hardware that came through Ferrix, linking these with a rebel cell. Dedra reveals that Andor returned to Ferrix 3 days after the heist, with money, and was clean-shaven. Another agent brings up the men in the heist were clean-shaven, therefore linking Andor to the heist, and this is to be followed up. Marva is to be left alone, and she is to serve as bait for Andor. Back on the prison planet at the switchover, rumours over level 2. 100 workers have been wiped out. Kino is worried but tells the workers to calm down. Khan is home with his mum, who wants to know what he's been up to and has searched his room. Khan has been promoted. Back to the prison planet, manufacturing is progressing quickly, but the old man in Andor's group is slow. Then, with breakfast with Mon, her husband asks if Vel is staying. She is going home to do pilgrimage. He thinks she should marry and brings up Mon's old friend Tay, telling their daughter he is a former boyfriend, which he wasn't. Mon and he went to school together. Vel talks us over with Mon. Vel is to act like a spoiled rich girl for a while. Mon asks whether they know what they are doing, and Vel responds by saying they had to choose a side, the light over the dark. Back on Ferrix, and it shows a broken down Bix. Back to Coruscant, Khan meets Dedra to thank her for his promotion. All she did was give him a clean slate, but he is obsessed with Andor still. She thinks he is stalking her. He wants to join the ISB, and she threatens him by having him arrested and sent out to the Outer Rim if he persists. Dedra is then informed that the ISB have captured a rebel pilot using an Imperial masking unit. Dedra is sent to interrogate him. Mon meets Tay to discuss the accounts and donations, and to paper it over. She may be in trouble if her accounts are scanned. Money out but not money in. She needs a loan, which Tay has a suggestion. A loan from Davo, who Mon thinks is a thug and is upset by this. The rebel pilot is one of Anto Krieger's men. The ISB can't let him go, so they set up a plan where the pilot perishes and the ship that he was in let go to be recovered by the rebels. There are to be no traces of the ISB left with the rebel ship. Back at the prison planet, the manufacturing proceeds at pace. The old man collapses and he has to be held up and then carried out. The team that lagged behind for that day are punished. A doctor is called, and the old man has 40 shifts left. The doctor arrives and examines the old man. The old man cannot be saved because he's had a massive stroke and he is in effect put down. The doctor states that in another week they will all ask for what just happened to the old man. Andor asks what happened on level 2, and the doctor tells them to keep it quiet. The doctor then gets the guards to get a stretcher to take the old man away. And while this is happening, Kino is very upset and asks again. The doctor reveals that the prison guards made a mistake. The man released from level 2 that went to level 4 was then returned to level 2, and when word got out of this error, the whole of level 2 was wiped out, and Kino now reveals the number of guards on each level to Andor. The old man is taken away in a bag. In the cells, Andor tells Kino that they must escape tomorrow, and that they don't have enough guards for the prison, and are worried about how to restrain 5,000 prisoners who can't leave. Kino wants them to get moving, and he doesn't commit. They get into a pushing contest, but Andor has a plan to stage it when the new worker is brought in. In the cells, Andor tells the other prisoners about what happened on level 2, and Kino confirms the story, but they must figure things out. At the ISB base, Krieger's men took the bait over the rebel ship, and to make it look right to spring the trap, the ISB must investigate and keep up appearances. Back on the prison planet, Kino gives his thoughts, and that is to escape. Work continues for the moment. Back on Ferrix, the doctor goes to Marva. Sintra is watching, but someone else, an Imperial spy, is also observing this. Mon speaks to Davo in general terms and posturing. He has met her husband previously. Mon explains the need for alternative finance, and Davo is laying out his stall and offers a more fluid banking system for her. Mon doesn't want to owe money and favours. He wants a return invitation to bring his son and introduce him to her daughter. Mon is not happy about this, and she initially rejects the offer. At Luthen's shop, his assistant tells him there is a mark at the fountain and that a rail has broken off on the stairs, and this is fresh. An insider ISB agent is trying to contact Luthen and wants a meeting. Andor wants to set the plan up of escape into action. Kino tells the others there is only one way out. Andor cuts a water pipe, the pipe that he was cutting in an earlier episode. This coincides with the transport of the prisoner. The water then goes onto the electric floor, which will in turn short it out. The prisoners begin their revolt. There is a bit of a firefight and a few prisoners perish. The electric floor is then activated, with most prisoners getting onto workstations, and due to the water on the floor is then overloaded, and the prisoners then charge the guards, and they overwhelm the guards, who then perish. Kino's group escapes and seizes weapons, and they make their way through the corridors. The guards react to this. More prisoners escape, and there are casualties on both sides. More prisoners escape the cells or work areas. Andor and Kino get to the command center and shut down the electric power flow and main power. Kino goes to the comms to tell prisoners what to do. Andor is not pleased at first about what Kino was saying, but Kino picks it up and tells the other prisoners of the fate of Level 2, that they are not being released and will be transferred to another prison, and encourages prisoners to escape. There is one way out. The prisoners converge on the main entrance and start jumping into the water. Kino, who can't swim, ends up staying behind. On Coruscant, the ISB agent makes contact with Luthen in an underground city area. In a lift, he pulls out an earpiece to talk to Luthen, who congratulates him on becoming a father and confirms he was watching the agent. The agent tells Luthen about Dedra looking for Axis and his network, and she is looking into the stolen Imperial hardware and the connection with the heist and Ferrix. Luthen tells the agent to encourage this. The agent also tells Luthen about the captured rebel pilot and the infiltration of Krieger's cell and his planned attack on the power station with 50 rebels. Luthen tells the agent that the attack must go ahead to protect the agent's identity, and that this is a worthy sacrifice. Because if the attack doesn't go ahead, the Empire will know something is amiss. The ISB agent tries to back out before he is caught, because he is now a father. He has given Luthen information on Ferrix and Dedra and the rest. Luthen doesn't allow him to back out. Too much time and resources were spent on recruiting him to let him go. Luthen is asked what he has sacrificed. Luthen has sacrificed all inner peace, all contact with friends and family. He is alone, and he can't escape his path, and he knows he is damned. He is condemned to use the tools of his enemy to defeat them. He has burned his life so that the sun shines for others. He has sacrificed everything. This is actually a very good and powerful speech. The ISB agent then leaves. Andor, now on land, is still in the process of escaping. Andor and another prisoner he escaped with are hanging off a cliff to avoid Imperial TIE fighters on patrol. Marva has passed, and Bassa comforts the droid. Marva is taken out of the house and taken away. Sintra observes this. Andor and the other prisoner spy on two aliens and see their ship, which they plan to take to escape the planet. They start running towards the ship, and one of the aliens activates something on his wrist, and it is a net that captures Andor and the other prisoner. Dedra is informed of Marva's passing, and she wants to observe this. Dedra wants a permit granted for the funeral in the Ferrix tradition, a cremation and then baked into a brick, which is then put into a building, and this whole process is to draw Andor out. Back on the prison planet, the aliens discuss the captured prisoners, and they are released from the net, and the aliens offer to take them to Neomas. At Luthen's shop, Vel arrives and speaks to Luthen's assistant. She wants to speak to Luthen. The assistant states they have rules, and that they can't speak until the following day, which is too late. Vel tells the assistant that she did the Dedani heist. What has she, the assistant, done? The assistant doesn't like this and reprimands Vel that The assistant is constant in this operation. Vel tells her of Marva's passing. On Ferrix, an Imperial spy is spying on the droid and Bassa. So is Sintra. Bassa wants to take the droid back to his house, but the droid doesn't want to leave, so Bassa stays at Marva's old house for the night. Bix is haunted by the torture. An Imperial takes her for further questioning on Krieger and whether he is the one introduced to Andor, and she then breaks down. At Mon's apartment, her daughter is undertaking a traditional ceremony, and Vel is worried about this leading to a marriage proposal. Mon tells Vel about the money she took out for the rebellion, and Imperial inspections may look further into this. This is one entry at the end of the ledger that is missing. She went to Luthen for help. This is where Tay came in to replace her credits, but he discovered how much more trouble she was in, and after the heist, her accounts were frozen. Mon needs 400,000 credits. Luthen warned her, but she knows of a solution. Khan then receives a call from the security sergeant he had worked with in the previous episode to try and apprehend Andor, and he is now a civilian contractor. He has news on Andor. His mother has passed, and he may show up at the funeral, but the line is bad. On Neomas, Andor collects his things and sneaks out of the room, where two aliens are sleeping. Luthen then arrives to meet Saul, who now agrees to attack the power station with Krieger. Luthen thinks not, because the Empire knows of Krieger's plan to attack the power station, but Krieger doesn't know this. Luthen is willing to burn Krieger, and Saul knows this, and asks whether Luthen has an ISB agent, or has an ISB contact on the inside. Luthen confirms nothing. Saul is shocked that Luthen is willing to sacrifice Krieger and 30 men. Krieger does not know Luthen, not unlike Saul, who does know Luthen. Luthen gives Saul an option: warn Krieger and ruin the contact's position, or play the long game. Saul avoids answering the question and he wastes time. Saul asks Luthen who is his spy in his, i.e. Saul's camp. Luthen points someone out who protests his innocence. Luthen then pulls a gun from the soldier, and then he points the gun on Saul to get Saul to listen. Krieger goes down, the ISB feels invincible, leaving the rebels with a clear view. If Krieger lives, the ISB will know of the leak and trust nothing. Saul reluctantly agrees. Back on Coruscant, Khan waits for his mother to leave. He goes into the safe and takes the credits there. Luthen and his assistant talk up over his meeting with Saul over a radio subspace link, and also Andor, but it's all in code. Luthen assistant contacts him about closing the sale, which Luthen does. It is more costly than expected, but they're in no position to bargain. She wants Luthen to come home. Luthen is curious about the other piece on the table and open to negotiation. They have representatives on the ground, and Luthen may complicate things. Luthen says they need that piece, otherwise they close shop. She tells him there is nothing he can do, which is never true, he replies. She says that it's a crowded market, and he thinks there are other collectors for the piece, and she is preparing for every outcome. Then the line goes down in static. There is an Imperial ship with a big dish coming in behind Luthen's ship, which is blocking his transmission. The Imperial ship's commander contacts Luthen and wants his transponder codes. After a little time, he gives a fake one from Alderaan. Another Imperial frigate is approaching. There is rebel activity in the area. They engage a tractor beam and start to pull Luthen's ship in. He engages its engines and deploys countermeasures, destroying the main dish and the TIE fighters that are launched, and those TIE fighters are also destroyed, and Luthen escapes. Sandman, who owns a transport business that helped Andor in a previous episode, is then contacted by Andor, wanting to speak to Marva, and Andor is then informed that Marva has passed, and this upsets Andor. The other prisoner speaks to Andor about how many other prisoners escaped and how many of them are alive. Andor says not enough. They split up to tell people what happened at the prison, and then the episode ends. There is a young mechanic working on a small machine. Then an Imperial shuttle lands on Ferrix. It's Dedra. Bixen is in her cell, and she is being watched by cameras within the cell. The mechanic continues repairing circuitry on the device. There is a hologram of Salman there. Zanwan speaks to Bassa about Andor. The Imperial agent on Ferrix takes a disguised Dedra on a tour of Ferrix, and they are both followed by Sintra. more with the mechanic on his circuitry. Sanwan is in conversation with another man who is actually very suspicious, and this will come out later in the episode. There is more with the mechanic on his circuitry. On Coruscant, Mon is waiting in a cab, and she is stressed. She calms herself and waits for her husband, who then enters the cab. They talk over his gambling. The driver, who is an Imperial plant, is asked for privacy, but he listens in anyway. Mon accuses the husband of gambling, which he then denies. This information is a plant by Mon to distract the Empire from her spending by putting the anomalies onto her husband, who has gambled before. Vel is on Ferrex at Sintra's apartment. Sintra is being observed by the ISB agent, and Sintra tells Vel about this and Dedra. They must get to Andor first. Andor is on Ferrex and remembers his father Clem cleaning some old equipment and selling it. He goes to the mechanic shop and speaks to someone there and finds out that Bix is a prisoner. Luthen is also on Ferrex, and Andor listens to the manifesto he received from Karis early in the season. The Imperials plan for action for the funeral. The cab driver reports a conversation about Mon's husband gambling. The ISB finds this useful, and this explains a lot. In the ISB meeting room, it is revealed that Krieger and his men have all perished, and Dedra, who is on Ferrex, is not happy about this, because he can't interrogate anyone, and is told by the Major to find Axis. Luthen goes to town. The ISB agent sees someone with a droid and notices it's not Basso. Basso meets Andor under the mechanic's shop and talk about Marva and her message to Andor and why Andor left. Andor plans to rescue Bix. Khan and the former sergeant on the bus with awkward silence. The suspicious man from earlier spies on Pegler at the mechanic's shop. Luthen meets Vel and they talk about Andor. They also discuss the Empire and the ISB who will do the hunting for them, and they will then follow the ISB agents, then dispatch Andor. The stones are then banged. The music begins playing and the rebels and Imperials don't know what is going on because the funeral has started early. Khan, Luthen and the Imperials converge on the town square at the same time as the funeral parade begins. The mechanic joins the parade. An Imperial officer wants a show of force and dispatches troops. Andor, from his vantage point opposite the hotel, sees this and Luthen. He is figuring out how to rescue Bix. The suspicious man goes to the ISB agent and tells him that he needs to be arrested to then reveal what he knows about Andor being on the planet and is in the opposite building. Dedra is informed and she wants Andor taken alive. Khan sees Dedra and wants to join her but is stopped by the sergeant. Busso comes with Marva's brick with the droid. The crowd converges on the Empire troops. Empire troops enter the building Andor was in, but he has escaped through the underground tunnels, and he uses the tunnels to get into the hotel, entering a storage area and runs into a local employee who tells him where Bix is. The droid plays Marva's message, which is intercut with Andor in a hotel and Dedra looking for Andor. She recounts her memories and wants Ferrex to survive. The people have been sleeping and turned from the truth, but they need to rebel and fight the Empire, who she describes as a disease. Dedra continues to search for Andor and Andor for Bix. Andor dispatches a guard and reaches Bix, who dreamt he would come over the wall for her. The Imperial officer kicks the droid over. The mechanic, who has been working on an explosive, throws it and it goes off. A riot starts. Khan runs towards Dedra but cannot get to her at this point. Andor helps Bix up. Vel runs into the smoke. The Imperial officer orders the stormtroopers to open fire. Sanwan perishes. Sintra lures the ISB agent into a trap and dispatches him. The droid is rescued and escapes. Andor comes under fire but fires back. The suspicious man from earlier has perished. Andor leaves the hotel with Bix. The riot continues and the rioters get their hands on Dedra and start leading her away, but Khan is able to get to her and gets her into a storage room, and she reluctantly thanks him. Luthen has escaped the riot. Sintra and Vel prepare to leave and pack up the apartment. Vel is worried over Sintra because she sees blood, but Sintra reassures her, saying it's not her blood. Basso, B2EMO, Pegler and Wilman prepare to leave Ferrex on the ship. Pelga, who has helped them up to the ship, stays behind. Andor arrives at the ship with Bix and puts her onto the ship, but he is not going with them. but he says that he will meet them later on a moon. Then the group take off in the ship. At Mon's apartment, Mon and family meet Davro and his family for the arranged marriage. The security sergeant has a drink. Luthen bikes back to his ship and prepares to leave, and asks the onboard computer to plot a new course, but there is no answer. Andor then appears and confronts Luthen about being there to end him. Luthen gets a gun, but Andor wants to join him instead, and Luthen agrees to this. In a mid-credit scene, the items built at the prison manufacturing planet is shown being used in the construction of the Death Star. Episodes 1 and 2 are a bit slow, and even though both episodes are under 40 minutes, it feels that there is quite a bit of filler, especially over some of the flashbacks and Andor wandering around, but I think the series starts to pick up in episodes 3 and 4. In episode 1, Andor looks for his sister, but then this is only brought up once more after this, when Marvel tells him to stop looking into his sister, and then nothing is then made of this subplot again. So it does feel to be a bit of a waste. Luthen is an interesting character, showing a lot of contradiction. A smiley chap has a front on Coruscant at his shop, but behind the scenes a much darker side. And the series does show a much darker, more ruthless side of the rebellion, which I found to be very good and I found to be very interesting. Luthen is a very well acted and is a very good character. Really, he's actually the standout character in the series. The middle episodes are quite long, being about 50-55 minutes. In episode 5, there is a lot of walking up to the rebel base, which I didn't think they really needed to show all that. I would say the same going up to the Imperial base for the heist, and also with some of the prison scenes in episode 8. I mean, once it was established what Andor is doing, you don't need to keep going back to doing the same, same thing. It doesn't really move the story along. I mean, the scenes with him, plotting to escape and soaring the pipe and so on, that's fine. It's just basically with him at the table making stuff. You don't need to continually show him doing that. And I would say the same of some of the party scenes with Mon Mothma. The first ones with her friend over the moving of funds is fine. The second batch of scenes about stopping the bill slows things down a little bit. Episodes 9, 10 and 11 at around 42 to 45 minutes are more to the point than some of the other middle episodes, and they are, I think, the right sort of length for these episodes generally. The last episode at 54 minutes, I thought, that was okay. It was decent, but it goes back to the young mechanic a few times at the beginning, and I don't think they need to keep going back to that mechanic. The man who starts talking with Zanwan and observes things unfold, and who ultimately is the informant to the Empire. I mean, this is quite obvious from the start. The series does well showing a lazy, arrogant and corrupt Empire that, when challenged, acts with ruthlessness. It also shows the ruthlessness of the rebels, and it really shows a more realistic side of things and is more a shade of grey, and I thought this was very good. Overall, the first 2 episodes are a bit slow. There is some bloat in episodes 7 and 8, and a little with the last episode, but I thought that Andor was a good, solid show that I enjoyed. In fact, I actually enjoyed Andor more than I did The Mandalorian, and I would give Andor 7.5 or 8 out of 10. It was a very decent show, I thought. Well, thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.